Thank you for joining me for this episode of God Talk. And in this episode of God Talk, I want to talk to you about a leap of faith. I don't know if you remember that movie by that name, but as a kid, one of my favorite movies, I probably was in high school. It was a religious movie, sort of. Actually, it's about a con artist that the guy becomes religious. A character played by Steve Martin, who is this traveling televangelist who does these revivals, and it's kind of just in order for him to get rich. And he's going from town to town to town, making his money, just kind of going through the motions, having people pretend to be sick and get healed, and just playing all the games and gimmicks that so oftentimes go on in sometimes those more sleazy type ministry settings. Anyways, throughout the process of it all, though, he falls in love, his heart changes, and he literally kind of comes to faith. And so the movie called A Leap of Faith, that through his just shady ministry, if you want to call it that, he becomes a true follower of Christ. Well, I think there's a lot of things in life that are leaps of faith. And I think I experienced one a little bit today. I had a couple different interviews for a couple different positions that we're needing to hire here at Light of the World. And honestly, probably for the last at least 6 weeks or so, I've been trying to, actually, it's been more probably 2 full months in trying to fill the worship position that's going to become vacant at the end of September when Joe and Abby leave our church and go back to West Virginia, where he's going to enter school to become a missionary. And on top of that position, then with John going and starting his own church, we've had to fill a discipleship role around here, someone that can help us help people grow in their faith. And it's always been kind of a need as well to kind of get people who are visiting the church more plugged into the church, and people who are currently at the church, get them more involved in the church and so forth. Fancy term for that's assimilation. So I had a couple different interviews, and in between the first interview and in the last interview, the first one was at 9:30 this morning, and then the latter one was at 3 o'clock. But in between there, I got to do the Tarrant County National Day of Prayer Luncheon, which I kind of sat on a little committee that helped put that together. Judge Tim O'Hare, the county judge in Tarrant County, is the one who did all the work. He just grabbed a group of pastors to kind of help them a little bit promote it and give some feedback on it and so forth. So went to that from 11:30 to 1 today, and that was a very cool experience to see so many people that are in government that are so firmly rooted in their faith. And then I came back for this other interview. So anyways, going back to the worship position, for like the last 2 months or so, I've been trying to fill this position. We thought we had someone. It looked like he was going to come, and then he ended up backing out. And I circled back around all the people that had applied, and followed up with a couple different people that I didn't, for different reasons, initially reach out to. And the guy that I interviewed today, I didn't reach out to him initially because he was kind of looking for a job immediately, and Joe gave me such long notice before he was going to be leaving that it didn't seem like the timing was going to work out. But here we are a couple months later, and it's getting a little closer, and I thought it was worth having the conversation, and it was a great conversation. And I think he might potentially be the one that God is bringing to Light of the World to take over the worship ministry, and I think potentially help us to grow it to the next level. He's going to be filling in a couple weeks when Joe's out of town, and as long as it's a positive experience for him, it's a positive experience for the congregation, and a positive experience for the band and the praise team, then we're going to move forward on it. And I'm just really excited about the possibilities with that. So we got a potential new hire and job offer there. And there's another guy that I was supposed to be interviewing then later this afternoon that I was really kind of excited about too in terms of his resume. Now, this position, for the discipleship position, I've only been taking applications maybe a week and a half, not quite. I think this Saturday will be 2 weeks, but I've probably gotten 12 to 15 applications. I chose to interview one other person for that. position earlier this week. He was good, but I don't know that it was going to be a great fit for us. But it's certainly one that could have worked. But I kind of felt like maybe God had another candidate in store for us, and I felt really good about going into this interview. The interview that I was about to have, he looked good on paper. He was young, or is young, and he does a lot of the stuff that either we have holes in right now needing to be filled, or we will have holes in those areas of ministry when Joe leaves us at the end of September. And I have to tell you, that interview was just about as good as my one earlier this morning. And I'm like, am I just going crazy here that I'm basically at the point that I'm willing to make 2 job offers for 2 different positions all in the same day, especially when the one I've been working on for 2 months and the other one really only for 2 weeks. And so with the guy for that position, I'm going to circle back with him in about 4 or 5 days, give him time to think about it, pray about it, talk to his wife about it, and then we'll kind of see what other questions arise. But we might have someone come in and being a part of the congregation in terms of that as well. And this will go down in history as being a great day, an amazing day for Light of the World, God willing. Or it might go down as being just a tragic day where Pastor Greg's making some really poor decisions. I don't think it's going to be that at all. Joe was in with me for the first interview with the worship guy, and Joe feels much of the same way about him as I do, and I feel really, really good about the second guy as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's exciting that we're gonna have some new blood coming in here at Light of the World, people that can help build on the foundations that several others have been building over the last 23 years at this congregation. And that's really what we want to do. We want to move forward. We want to grow in our abilities, to grow in our offerings of what we offer as a congregation, and to continue to grow the ministry here. And I really see that these 2 people will be able to take all the good work that the people have done before them here, and really build on it and take it to the next level. So in many ways it is a leap of faith, but I found throughout my life to just kind of follow God. Sometimes when you follow God, it's a bit of a whiplash, right? You may be getting discouraged over the last couple months because nothing is coming about, and then all of a sudden, like in one day, God leads 2 really powerful, competent, capable, meaning potentially meaningful additions to the ministry to you, and you can just go from like just frustration one day to just excitement the next. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm tired. The last 3 or 4 weeks have been kind of intensive with different things going on here and some of the changes. But I feel like God definitely tossed a huge blessing our way today, and for me personally, my way today. And I look forward to seeing where all this goes. Where are you at in your faith journey? What is God calling you to? What leaps of faith, and are you willing to take them? The Bible's filled with stories of people who God called to leaps of faith. I mean, listen, there's nothing that we experience in our life that will compare to some of these Bible stories, right? But our lives mirror them in a simpler way, in a smaller way. But a huge leap of faith, right, for David to think he can take on Goliath. But even back the story up from there, like before David fought Goliath, David's out tending his father's flocks, and both lion and bear at different times are trying to attack him, and David's willing to take on the lion and the bear with his bare hands. That takes some faith. It takes a leap of faith to do that. You think of Samson, and just he's taken on 1,000 Philistines with a jawbone of a donkey. I mean, that takes a little bit of faith, right? But David and Samson, they're not going to experience the blessings of God and the successes of God if they don't take that leap of faith. Abraham wouldn't experience becoming the father of Israel if he wasn't willing to take the leap of faith that he took when God called him to move to a promised land, to land he had never been before, promised him that he was going to have more descendants than stars in the sky, and he and his wife were already old. His wife passed childbearing age, and they were never able to have kids even when she was childbearing age. I mean, once again, a leap of faith. And even think about Jesus' disciples. I mean, you got this like random guy, because this is at the start of Jesus' ministry. No one knows who he is. Basically telling these people to come follow me. Whether those are fishermen who he gives a little teaching illustration to, hey, toss your net on the other side and see if you catch some fish there. Sir, we've been fishing all night. We haven't caught anything. Just humor me here. Throw your net on the other side. And they do, and they pull up all this fish. And somehow in that they have to discern, wow, this is a mighty man of God. They're willing to leave their profession, their occupation behind and follow him. Once again, like throughout the Bible, leap of faith. You oftentimes hear you don't receive great reward without great risk, and when you follow God in faith, there's going to be risk, but with that risk comes reward, and yeah, there has to be some discernment there. You have to kind of know how God speaks and how God works, and pray on things and be in tune with it. And certainly, I'm going to be in prayer about these two people that I spoke with today. As I continue to process through the conversations and everything, but with those risks come reward when we follow God in faith. And so, what kind of leap of faith is God calling you to take? And are you willing to take it, or are you going to just always kind of take the safe route, the easy route, the comfortable route? Right? I tell people time and time again, that the easy way is not usually the right way. I mean, it takes no courage to go the easy way. I mean, what's going to go wrong? But then again, what's really going to go right? You're going to get what you expect, and really nothing more, and probably nothing less. And it's kind of mundane living. It's that hamster wheel of life that we all run on, but it's not all that enjoyable, really. And so when we follow God in faith, when we take that leap of faith, that's when God can really work in our lives. And so how is he calling you? What is he calling you to? How is he trying to call you to get out of your comfort zone? What kind of changes is he trying to call you to make in your life? How is he trying to get you to embrace what he's already brought into your life that you continue to fight and push back against? Because I think that's a lot of it too, is like he brings things and we don't want to accept it. We don't want to receive it. Another kind of cool example of a leap of faith is a story where the disciples are out in the boat late one night, and Jesus was stayed behind and was praying, and he decides to come out to where his disciples are, except they're on a boat in the water, and there's really no way to get there other than swim, but he doesn't swim. Jesus starts walking on the water and walks out to where his disciples are out on the boat, and they think it's a ghost, that spirit, something's coming through the haze of night, the moon kind of going through maybe a thin layer of clouds. They see what looks like a person walking on the water, and Jesus has to basically tell them, "Don't be afraid. It's me. It's not a ghost." And Peter says, "Well, if it's you, Lord, then call me out to you." And so God, or Jesus, calls Peter to come out to him, and Peter steps out of the boat and onto the water. And don't you know that he's walking on water? But at the same time, the wind had kind of kicked up, and Peter looks down and he's feeling the wind, and he sees the waves, and he takes his eyes off Jesus, and he begins to sink, and honestly, he begins to drown, and he has to call out to the Lord for help, and the Lord reaches down and pulls him up. People give Peter all kinds of just crap, really, about the fact that he was sinking, but I give him kudos, because he was willing to get out of the boat. And most of us wouldn't be willing to get out of the boat in that situation. And most of us will never get to experience walking on water. I'm speaking metaphorically here, because none of us will literally. But most of us won't get to experience walking on water because we don't trust God with that kind of faith, that we're willing to take that leap of faith where we really get out of the boat and experience this amazing blessing of being able to walk on water. I'm not saying God calls for us to be irresponsible. I mean, there's got to be a level of discernment in all of this, where you really can discern that God's calling you to do something, and when He is, then you don't really have a choice in it, or you shouldn't have a choice in it. you follow him in faith. Because if you're never willing to follow him in faith, you'll never experience the fullness of the blessings that he has in store for your life. As I record this, I'm reminded of really my podcast from last week. It kind of ties in nicely to, you're not going to experience the blessings of God unless you follow him in faith. If you listen to the podcast from last week, I felt God moving for me to reach out to a doctor that I had back in my seminary days. Like, I hadn't talked to this guy for 25 years, but when I did see him for the 3 years that I was living in St. Louis, every time I would go in there, we'd have these deep theological conversations, and I got to know him fairly well during that time. I had no idea if he'd remember me 25 years later, but for some reason, God had put on my heart to reach out to him. And so I did. I sent him a letter. I faxed him a letter, basically saying, "Hey, don't know if you remember me." And I discussed this all in my podcast from last week, but I said, I don't know if this is for me or for you, but I feel like God's put it on my heart to reach out to you. So I hope this finds you well. Well, he ends up sharing with me back. It took like almost 2 weeks, but he said, it was so good to hear from you. And he shared with me that he had a 7-week-old grandson that was diagnosed blind, and he wasn't going to be able to see. But around the time that he gets this fax, that was for me with the letterhead from, Light of the World Church, his old buddy that he hasn't heard from for 25 years is like reaching out to him from Light of the World Church, and his prayer becomes that, the light of the world, that is Jesus, would allow his grandson to see light. And at the same time this is all happening, his daughter's noticing like her child is starting to see things, and they put him in and give him an MRI, and they see that, in fact, he all his like things are intact that need to happen for him to be able to see, and that they think that he is starting to see, and that vision is going to continue to improve. And so what a huge prayer answered for him, and what a huge blessing. And how did God let him know that he was hearing his prayers? He heard him through just how he understood it is through this message from this old pastor friend that he had, that is now pastor of a church called Light of the World. And the Light of the World was going to help his grandson to not be blind. And then like a week or two after that, he ends up sending me a video of his grandson being able to follow like this Pez dispenser thing, across his field of vision, and he's following it, and he's reaching out and grabbing it with his hands. A child that was, the parents were told, your child's never going to be able to see. I would have never been able to experience that story and to experience the joy that came from hearing my old doctor friend experience this miracle in his life if I hadn't reached out to him. And not only was it a blessing for him to be able to experience that miracle, but it was a blessing to me to have it shared with me, because I was willing to take the chance that I might sound stupid reaching out to someone that I didn't even know if he would remember me after all of these years. And not only did he remember me, but God did a miracle through the conversations that we had, at the same time, me reaching out to him at the same time that his daughter is now recognizing that her son is being able to see. If you haven't listened to the podcast, you got to go back and listen to it. It was really, really a cool experience. And once again, like, we don't experience these things if we're not willing to take a leap of faith. Unless we're willing to maybe look foolish at times as we follow the Lord's lead, unless we're willing to do things that we otherwise might not be willing to do, to embrace things that maybe we're trying to resist. I don't know what it is in your life, but I know that if you're not willing to get out of the boat, you'll never be able to experience the joy of being able to walk on water. If you're not willing to take a leap of faith and to follow God, when God doesn't always make sense, then you're never going to be able to experience that amazing joy, that peace and that contentment that comes with following God in faith and watching what God will do through it. I hope these words encourage you, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. God bless.